So you sell a house, you create ordinary income. If you hold a house and you rent it, you lose money, right, on paper. And if you can sell just enough to survive and do this while you're young or younger, because that's not me, heck, you look up and you got generational wealth.
Hi, Richard.
What's up, guys?
Thanks for joining us. Those of you in our audience who don't know who Richard Drake is, let me just give a little background. Richard is a former naval officer and the CEO of Renters Warehouse Houston, which is the most successful Renters Warehouse franchise in the nation. He is also owner of the oldest HomeVestors franchise and has flipped over 1,500 houses. So thank you so much for joining us.
No, I was reading your bio. I knew you were a HomeVestors guy. Definitely know your success with the Renters Warehouse. Y'all kind of came out of nowhere, at least from my observation. And then now you're like this behemoth, one of the best ones in the entire nation, right? Like you've set a lot of new records.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of business.
So from both an investor standpoint and also the services standpoint with your property management company, you definitely have a very strong pulse on the market, active, and then just operationally. What are you seeing the real estate market looking like in 2022?
Well, I'll echo what Ray just got through saying. I don't think there's much of a chance in the next decade or longer that we can catch up with a supply shortage. The regulatory environment right now is so tough, and it's not going to get any better, right? It's just going to get
you're thinking
more strict, more overreaching, right?
So you're thinking we may have a decade of that?
Well, here's what I'll say. I'm not necessarily saying that we're going to see 20% appreciation every year, right? That's not normal, and it goes crazy. And
eventually you hit that affordability problem.
Correct. So what'll happen? Yeah. Exactly. However, the demand for housing is outpacing the delivery of new properties every year, and it has for years and decades already. So the fact that development is more difficult, more regulations, environmental this, drainage that, cost here, cost there. No one wants to build, for instance, a C-class apartment. They're not going to do it. It's not affordable. You can't build a C-class apartment from the ground up and make money. Yeah. You have to build A-class, right? So there's a huge opportunity, I think, in there where people are buying and holding these older apartments that, they can make a significant return, because that inventory is in higher and higher demand because of the affordability of single families, even more demand for the apartment, right? Higher and higher demand, and the inventory is going down because they're eventually getting demolished or converted to something else or what have you. And it's a perfect storm for that little niche. The second part is the same, 250 and below houses. I don't see any scenario where they don't appreciate significantly for 10 years plus.
That's why so I had an eviction before the show, and this is one where we've already done an eviction on that house before, but it's in the path of progress. But when you look at the math, I was telling Jamie, it was like every year, just from our single family rentals, excluding the multifamily, we gain $100,000 in equity a year based on a normal scenario, not COVID crazy appreciation scenarios. It just makes it so hard for landlords to want to give that up, because what's my opportunity cost? I'm gonna go ahead and
it's an interesting time. I did an interview for HomeVestors Corporate because they have their 25th anniversary, right? And one of the things they said was, if you could go back and be yourself on day one of being an investor, what would you do? And it was the easiest answer I've ever had: hold as much as I could.
Yeah.
Because if I look back at all those houses that I flipped, right, hundreds and hundreds of houses that I sold for $150 that are $600,000 or $700,000 houses.
$50 a square foot, $60 a square foot.
And I thought I was killing it. For instance, everybody knows South Park, right? I would buy houses over there for $7,000, $10,000, $12,000, and sell them for $59,900, and people thought we were ripping people off at $59,900.
Yeah,
it's too high. I can't believe you're selling for that much. $59,900. You can't even buy a wholesale deal for $75,000, $80,000 anymore over there.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. That's what,
And
that's what the lots go for now.
and I still hold a lot of property over there because they do great. But if I looked at, when you sell a house, you create in current income, ordinary income. Because a lot of people say, well, selling real estate is capital gains. Not if it's your business. If it's your business, that's your business. If you're a real estate professional, it's ordinary income to you. So you sell a house, you create ordinary income. If you hold a house and you rent it, you lose money, right, on paper. And if you can sell just enough to survive and do this while you're young or younger, because that's not me, heck, you look up and you got generational wealth that you've built.
So yeah, that's a very, very good point there. So Jamie and I started realizing that, like, hey, we're making 20, 30, 40 on these flips, but these little rentals that we held for years, like every time we sold one, we made 100, 120. So and tax situation's different. It's not ordinary income. It's long-term capital gains, which there are ways to even defer that. But we call it the slow flip strategy. If you want to flip houses. Just do it over a 3, 5, 7 year timeline. And then if you can get enough in that hopper to feed yourself, you got to feed yourself in the meantime, whether it's a W-2 job or you're doing, you're flipping a couple, holding one, flipping a couple, holding one. And then in 5 years, you just want to sell off the worst one, the biggest headache. You got $100, you got $100 grand payday, $120 grand payday, $150 grand payday. And then if you really want to accelerate it, you take that $150 grand and you don't use it to go buy a Range Rover, and you go out and buy 3 more properties.
Yep.
Man.
Well, I saw a pretty neat deal. This guy was talking about this thing called 15 and 15. Have you ever heard that phrase?
No.
So what you do is you buy 15 houses over 15 years, and you could do 1 a year, or you could do 10 a year, right? But let's just use the example of 1 a year. You buy a house every year, you rent it out, you put it on a 15-year AM, and at the end of the 15th year, now you have 15 houses, right? And 1 house pays off, right? Now, you're not going to make any dang money off of these things with a 15-year AM, right? You're just not. You're not going to make a whole lot of cash flow because the accelerated payback. But if you look at that, if you can do that in some multiple of this, let's say they're $150,000 houses. Well, in 15 years, how much is that $150,000 house worth? Let's call it 300. Now, at the end of 15 years, you don't sell that house. You refi it. You get $240,000 out, or 200,000, let's say. Let's just be conservative. You only get 60% LTV. You get 200 out per house. Let's say you did 5 a year, so that'd be $1 million, right? If you did 5, and that's not income.
Yeah,
that's debt. That's debt.
Free.
Now every year you get $1 million. If you did 5 a year for 15 years, you get $1 million a year in new debt, but not income every year.
Tax free.
Maybe you did 5 a year, and now you're only going to refi 3 of them or 4 of them, and you just cash flow the other 2, right? Yeah. But the other part of that, over these years, all you've done is depreciate them and lose money on paper. So you've never paid income tax on all these years. In 15 years down the road, you have all of these houses where you could either let them all pay off if you don't need the money, and then just keep the rent. You may be bringing in $30,000 a month for all by then, right?
Yeah.
Or you can write, go get a new loan and cash out and buy a ranch. Who knows?
Yeah. That would be what I would want to do. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, this is kind of a trick question, but maybe not, especially not for you. Like, how many properties does it really take to be a real estate millionaire? And then I was like, in most markets, you can do it in like 2 or 3. But 5 everywhere will do it. You just have to let your tenants pay off the mortgage. $200 a month, $100 a month, even $500 a month. You're not going to retire off of that, but you will retire off of the mortgage paid off. You got a few of these. Now you got $1 million plus, in addition to whatever else you have in your 401k, Roth, and all this other stuff. Yep. So
Yeah, sitting there watching all of my tech stocks go up and down and up and down and up and down. It's crazy.
Yeah, and probably your Bitcoin. I don't know if you're in crypto, but
Yeah, Bitcoin's doing all right. I have more Ethereum than Bitcoin. It's doing better.
yeah, I really like ETH. So real estate market, back to that in 2022 for investors who are looking to get in. There has been that. Well, we talked on the the whole, hey, I should wait. So let's go a different direction. There are those who they're getting frustrated because of the unique circumstances of this market. It's highly competitive due to low supply. What advice do you have for those investors that do want to get in? They don't believe the market's going to crash tomorrow. They're just getting a little frustrated.
Yeah, and you got to remember, 20 some odd years ago when we started buying houses, there was no competition. So we could buy, 20 houses a month easily. I say easily. It's a lot of work, right? But we could source 20 deals a month without a whole heck of a lot of advertising or effort. Nowadays, it's not a thing. It's highly competitive, very sophisticated players out there. You've even got private equity competing and overpaying, which is fine. They'll fail. So, but what you can do and do very successfully, and we've done this 50 times in the last few years, just buy from wholesalers. I mean, there's still some meat on the bone. You don't have to steal a house to rent it out and make decent money, and in the long run build a whole heck of a lot of wealth and not have to build this whole advertising and buying machine, right? You don't need all that infrastructure if you just pay the wholesaler a couple bucks to find the deals, let them make a couple bucks. You may pay a little bit more than you would have, but heck, by the time you figure out all your overhead for having a buying machine, it might not be that far off.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the wholesaler, you're outsourcing operations, specifically marketing and sales. Like, do you want to go out? And if you have a full-time job, it's going to be very difficult in this market. I mean, it's difficult in general. In this market, it's going to be extra difficult. So you're saying, hey, go out and find those really reputable wholesalers in your market and get to know them, get on their list, talk to them. And that's just a good way to do it without having to do all the monkey business.
Honestly, if you perform for a wholesaler a couple of times, they'll put you at the top of the list. I mean, they are very short-sighted. Yeah, they're very short-sighted a lot of times, where they'll take less from a sure deal than try to put it out and get more because they're not sure that deal is going to happen. And I say short-sighted, and it also may be just a little risk averse because maybe they've got a contract that if they don't close, they may lose that deal, where they're going to go for the sure $5,000 than try to make 15 and not get anything.
Absolutely. And I guess word of caution for the investors wanting to work with wholesalers: vet the wholesaler too. Like they're definitely going to vet you, but you need to vet them too. Get references. Don't just go handing out cash to people you don't know.
Yeah, I've always loved the whole $3,000 non-refundable thing. And I tell them, well, yeah, I'm not doing that. So
yeah,
if you want to make a deal, we can. I'll put some money at the title company, but I'm not handing you $3,000, and I don't even know if you have clear title. Yeah, I've never understood that whole model. Now, there's a guy I've done 30 deals with, whatever, but for the most part, it's going to the title company and earn his money.
Yeah, absolutely.
None of this non-refundable. I promise if we don't get clear title, I'll just give it back.
Yeah, and with those contracts that have automatic extensions in perpetuity. All right. How can folks reach out to you?
Rich at renterswarehouse.com. We're at renterswarehouse.com. Check us out on the web. We got plenty of data there to check out. One of the things we do that I think is pretty cool is we can analyze rental property for you. We have a marketplace. So if you go to investor resources or investor marketplace on our website, we have portfolios for sale. We can help you sell portfolios. We can help you buy portfolios, but it's a pretty neat little deal where you can it's industrial level analytics for free. I mean, you can go in there and look at, yield over time. You can look at all you can put in all the variables you want and analyze a property there. All for free.
Wow.
When I recommend property management companies, just tell them, like, look, they're going to be able to let you know all this all the stuff that you don't know about rent rates and good areas and all this stuff. Like that's where your property management company comes in place. And
Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, our agents, we have realtors working for us, and they've been trained to be kind of, investor friendly, right? So they're not your typical, no offense to a Keller Williams or whoever, but those realtors want to talk to a mom and pop that have an $800,000 house for sale and they want to be the listing agent. They don't know what cash on cash return is. They don't understand, capital reserves for rentals or maintenance reserves. They don't understand how much it's going to be. Ours talk that language and they can really look at it and say, well, this looks like a great deal. And they go, don't forget, look at the HOA on this house is $800 a year. The tax rate, it's a mud, it's too high. And you got to put some money aside for the AC and the roof because the roof's 8 years old and the AC is 12 years old. Right. So our guys will talk you out of a deal if that's the right thing to do. Right.
Yeah.
So, that's a great tool to have because that's really the number one question we get. Like, how do you analyze if this is a good rental or not? And that's an awesome tool that y'all provide.
Go ahead, Jamie. Sorry.
Oh, it's done.
No, you also have to look at like I said, tax rate. You got to look at is it Galveston County? Is it windstorm area? Or now you got extra insurance?
Yeah.
Or do you have flood insurance? Right. So all those things add up to an effect on your yield. And our realtors know how to look at that versus the realtor that knows, well, that's a, so-and-so backsplash. And this is a so-and-so, this is a Thermador refrigerator. Don't you love it? Where you want to sign now? That's all they know, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, that is a great tool to have. And everything you said, a lot of the things you stated really resonated with Chris and I, especially the part about hold more properties. So if you're listening and you're getting anything out of this today, hold more properties because that is one thing. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Wish we did. We're doing it now. With all those flips that we've done, man. So thank you so much for joining us. It was great having you on.